I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Tomorrow night, I'm gonna smash your boy, guys.
My balls was hot.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Is he kind of awesome?
Yes, welcome to Buiten De Kooi, the MMA podcast of the Netherlands. Today we will do the episode in English because we have a Dutch-American citizen. We had a previous episode which we did in Dutch with Bas, but this time we chose to do it in English. But before we start, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Nico for your fight gear and Beast Mode for your nutrition. The codes will be in the link which you get the discount for. Are you ready, Sammy?
Yes. So, Bas, first of all, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it. Last time you came on Buiten De Kooi, we got a lot of love. Every day we get comments saying, hey, he's a legend. So thank you very much for being here, man.
That's awesome. En ik hoorde Nico Sports als de sponsors. Dus daar ging ik vroeger naartoe. I went to Nico Sports when I was young. See, I'm already doing it in Dutch. That was the place we always went to before I started Thai boxing. You know, we would always watch the latest videos. This is where we saw the UFC for the very first time on the big screen. So, yeah, they're still around, these guys.
Yeah,
man.
Mike,
awesome.
We connected to Mike through my brother-in-law. He did some stuff for him on the marketing side, and then we connected with Mike. He's a very good guy. He connected us with you at the beginning. So yeah, he gave us a lot of love. So that's
people at home. You hear it from the legend himself, from Bas Rutten. If you need fight gear, Nico is the place to be. You hear it from the legend himself. You know.
That's it. You know, like my grandson started to do martial arts. So then Mike hooked me up with the whole outfit. So that was nice.
You heard it, guys. Nico Sports for all your fight gear.
Amazing. So let's get this started, man. Bas, first of all, how are you and what's keeping you busy these days?
Busy is Karate Combat, right? I'm the chairman and the host of that show. It's a full contact karate league where we have Olympians fighting full contact. So it's a really badass show. It's the only one in the world. So that's a nice thing as well. It's really weird filmed. If people want to check it out, go to karate.com. It's free. You know, we have the 26th, so that's next week. In 2 weeks, we have another event in Miami. That's going to be a fun show. And like I said, it's free. So what is not to love? And then for the rest, I got my auto trainer, the long breathing device that I'm doing. And then I'm doing a podcast as well. But we're just in the middle of changing to a different type of podcast. It's going to be a podcast. I'm going to go back all the way because a lot of people don't know this. This is funny. I'm a culinary chef, right? And I was there before I started fighting. And I did this episode with Guga Foods. This is a big barbecue guy. He's a really phenomenal. He has a big channel. And everybody was loving it. And I was cooking my stuff on his channel. And they said, man, why don't you start a cooking channel? I go, no, I want to interview people. And then I realized, wait a minute, what if we combine it? You know, I'm going to cook for people, and then we interview them while we're doing it. So that's a show we're starting to work on right now. I think in January we're going to have our first guest. It's a good guy I picked out. I don't want to say his name yet, but it's a comedian, so that's going to be fun. And then let's see what the people think. So then you can learn how to cook from Bas. That's going to be crazy. And we interview some interesting people.
It's kind of amazing to hear that one of the baddest guys on the earth is a culinary chef. So,
it's weird, right?
What's your favorite thing?
Yeah, my brother always laughed with that movie with Steven Seagal when he's the cook on the boat. He said, I go, hey. And now it's weird because that's what I wanted to be when I was a kid. When I'm from 6 years of age, I wanted to be a chef. And it always was there. And then suddenly martial arts came around. I was literally working in the kitchen at that time. My profession was to be a chef. Was being a chef. And then I started fighting, and now suddenly it's coming back, you know. And at home, I already cook here. My wife is really good as well, so I love her food. But you know, I'm still doing it, and I just have a little bit updating. But that's fast. It's like riding a bike, right? You do it 3-4 times, and I'm good.
I'm kind of wondering, how did you go from cooking to the MMA world? Because it's kind of, you don't hear it often that people are chefs and then decide, you know what, I'm going to use this hand to chop some faces.
Well, it's a big story. So I worked in a restaurant for already a couple of years. I pretty much ran that whole thing by myself. during the week especially. And I was very proud of that because I did, I think 43 people I did one time by myself, like over the whole evening. But it's an appetizer, it's a main course, and then a dessert. And to do that by yourself, it's a really hard thing to do. You need good planning. So I was always really happy about that. But then one day, on Tuesdays, we always had maximum 8 people coming in because it was a very bad day. So I always prepare for 20. And suddenly this cycling group came in, and it was like 35 people. So I ran to the big house because that's where the chef is, the main chef. And I said, you got to come and help me because I ran out of preparation. And he started throwing a fit about it. And I said, calm down. I've been working here for 2 years. There's a lot of Tuesdays. This never happened before, and I always prepare more than double. And he says, no, and you should have done this, should have done that. I say, okay, let's stop. Let's first take care of these people. And then if you want to talk further, we can do it after we're done. But he didn't want to give it up. And then he said, I needed to do everything that he said. And I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. And he said, well, he grabbed a big bowl of butter. And he says, if I throw this on the ground and I tell you to clean it up, you're going to clean it up. So I walked over to him. I hit the bowl of butter out of his hand. And I said, ask me to clean it up. And he says, you're going to clean this up. And I took my apron off and I said, there you go. Good luck with the 40 people we have inside. I'm out. And it was the last day I worked as a cook. And of course, as the chef, and he was calling me the whole time and he's apologizing. I go, dude, I've been running your freaking thing for 2 years straight, and then you come in and this moment you give me that kind of heat. I simply can't work. You showed your true colors. I can't work for you anymore. And then I started becoming, believe it or not, a model is another one. I have these magazines with pictures. You're going to freaking laugh your ass off when you see it. The blue steel, I got it all with the hair, right? Because I had hair at the time. But then that went well. I worked like 2.5, 3 days a week, which at the time was 1,050 guilders. I mean, this is all the way back when I was 20. That was really big, and a half a day was 750. And I go, man, I'm making good money. But then I started doing martial arts and started showing up with black eyes and shiners. They don't really like that when you have to do a photo session. So that was the end of that. So now I figured, what do I do that still involves fighting? Hey, I got it. Let's become a bouncer. And then I became a bouncer at the Galaxy in Sertogenbos. And that's when everything started. But then I also started training again on the side because I realized we close at 5 o'clock in the morning there at the Galaxy. And then afterwards we go to the after parties. As well as I do, everything goes wrong, right? There's drugs, there's drink, there's women, everything goes wrong. And I realized this is going to go wrong eventually. So I need to do something else. Let's start working out again. And I started training and I started doing these demonstrations. I don't know if you guys remember or maybe
the bar,
too young to remember that. The funny show that we did in Bercy with Roland Janssen and Joris Boon. And that suddenly started catching fire. And suddenly we're doing it for Eurosport. We're traveling. We're going to Spain. We're freaking in France. We're doing these demonstrations all over Europe. And then on one of these shows, Chris Dolman was there. And he saw me coming up with backflips. And that's how we would go to the break with a somersault. And then we would start a demonstration, like choreographed fight scenes. A lot of comedy we added. That's why the show was popular. And he stopped me and he says, hey, there's this new thing. This is in 92. There's this new thing called free fighting in Japan. And I remember you from your Thai boxing fights. You're always an animal. And now I see you making these backflips and somersaults and all that stuff. I think this could be really good for you. I go, sure, what is it? He goes, yeah, well, you can do pretty much anything. I go, does it pay? And he goes, yeah. I go, okay, well, sign me up. I would love to do that. So then I went over to him a few times, but it's in Amsterdam. I'm from Eindhoven. It's a far, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, especially if there's traffic. So it didn't really go there. I had an injury. And then one day he called me and suddenly he said, okay, Bas, you got to jump in the car right now. You got to come to Amsterdam because there's a tryout. There's this new organization called Pancrase. There's 2 fighters here and they're scouting. And if you come, maybe you're going to have a job, So I jumped in my car, went over there and I got into a brawl with one of his champions because that was the organization Rings at the time. And I told the guy to slow down. He said, dude, they only want to see technique. We don't have to go hard. But I think he thought I was afraid, so he turned it up. So I go, I'm okay with it. I said, but it's not going to be one-way traffic, you understand, right? So now, of course, it was on. So I freaking high kicked him in the head, knocked him out. And that was it. That's where the two scouts, Suzuki and Funaki, were there. They were pointing at me and they said, we want him. And I think 2 months later, 2.5 months later, was September 21st, 93. He said, hey, we have a fight for you. And boom. And now I'm here talking to you guys. Really weird.
Crazy story. You went from working in the kitchen and then
A model.
to a bouncer. And then you have the story where you knocked the guy out in sparring and you got the opportunity to go to Japan. It's crazy.
That's it, And that was Chris, Chris really hooked me up there. He's the godfather of mixed martial arts in Holland, as we all know. He put a lot of people, a lot of guys, Dutch guys, in the business. So, always been a great guy. Still in contact with him as well.
Can you tell a little bit more about the story where you knocked the guy out? So you guys were supposed to show the technique like a demonstration, but he just turned it up. And you were like, okay, let's do this. If you want to do this, then let's do it.
Yeah, that was it. He was just, he went hard. I think he wanted to impress the people. And he was fighting for rings. And I go like, dude, we don't have to. They just want to see if you can do high kicks and back kicks. We don't have to go hard. But somehow he just kept going hard. Sometimes you have those guys. So then I stopped him again. I just told him, I said, listen, I'm okay with that. But I'm going to fight back, I'm going to do the same thing what you're doing to me. I'm going to do it back. So now immediately, of course, it started much harder. But it was really fast because I immediately got him. I already saw the opening when we were sparring that I could right kick him in the head. So, and I didn't do that because they were watching. So then when he had the opportunity, I go, might as well go for it. And he needed a bunch of stitches too, because they sent him to the hospital. So it looked very dramatic. There was blood, and that's one point. And another reason they wanted me. This is the dumbest thing ever. So I can jump high, right? I was a high jumper, long jumper, and track and field when I was young. So I can stand before the ring. If the rope is here, I can literally stand still and I can jump over the rope. And so when I walked to the ring at Chris Dolman's place, I stood in front of the ropes and I jumped over into the ring. And these Japanese people, they said they wanted me also because I could do that. That was also one of the reasons. So the knockout together with the high jump was apparently the reason they picked
What happened
me.
afterwards? Did you guys talk about it? Was he angry? Because you took away his opportunity.
No, not at all. Actually, I met him a bunch of years later. We were in a nightclub somewhere. I think the Milkway or something. We were something. No, the IT, I believe we were, in Amsterdam all the way back. And suddenly he stands next to me at the restroom. And he goes, hey, good, what's up? And he goes, good, man. I said, man, I'm so proud of you. He said, I'm so happy that it worked out, and what you're doing right now. So he was very happy.
Maybe he was kind of scared because of the high kick. He was like, I have to compliment him.
Yeah, listen, he knew what he was doing, right? I mean, it's like if you bully, and I tell you to please stop, and you keep on going, and suddenly I knock you out. You kind of did that to yourself because I've been asking you. And if I'm asking, that means I already asked 3 times. I'm not a guy who hits right away. But there comes a moment that I say, okay, now you got to really stop. And most of the time when you say you don't want anything, they think you're afraid. So then they turn it up. And then I always go, dude, please don't think I'm afraid. I'm afraid to knock you out. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of me or you're doing something to me. So please tone this down. As a bouncer, I had the same thing. I go, I'm not. That's why I'm taking both you guys away from everybody. I'm standing outside alone here with the 2 big guys. Why do you think I would do that? If I'm afraid of you, I would never do that. But that would intimidate most of these guys. They would go like, well, this guy has to know more than he knows of than we think, because otherwise he would never do that. You see, it was just a bluff, and it always worked. So, and he knew he was turning it up. So, there's what is it? Action and reaction, right? Cause and effect. Well, if you're the cause, then you can also suffer
the
the
young
effect.
guys would say, fuck around and find out. So.
That's the best line. Yeah, that goes very
With the graph, where you can see the graph. So before we continue to the legendary Pancrase days, I want to go back a little bit. So you were a model that worked as a bouncer. Sounds like a lot of problems to me, with girls and drinks and stuff. How was it working as a bouncer?
Oh man, I'm just I'm writing a story right now. I'm writing my book, right? And I just called Commando Case. Commando Case was the guy that I worked with. Case, but the CEES, like spelled in Holland. But we say C-E-S-E, so we will pronounce Case as well. And then I was Base the Animal Steel, that was me. And he was Case the Commando. And we always had a lot of fun. This guy, but once I started writing, those stories start popping up, all the things that we did. It was a crazy time, man. I just leave it with like 2 fights per place where I work, because otherwise the whole book is going to be in with fights. And it doesn't, don't think that I fought a lot. Like I fought 25 times or something. Yeah, they might think it's a lot, but as a bouncer over the years, that's not too much, because I was, well, they wanted me as a bouncer because I was very easy with people. Like if there's 10 situations, we fight maybe 1 time. With other bouncers, you fight 8 times. With me, because I break things down and I say, hey, what's going on? Oh, he was looking at my wife. So did he touch her? No. Did he say anything to her? No. I go, that's kind of a compliment, right? I mean, do you want him to look at your wife and go, that? No. Yes, so, but if he didn't bother her and he didn't do anything, and I have them both in front of me while I'm saying this, it's kind of a compliment. And then they think, because it's always stupidity, they go like, yeah, you're right. They go, okay, so what do you guys drink? You have Heineken, you whatever, and I will give them a drink and the fight will be over. It will be settled because they realize it for nothing. And that's most of the time with every fight that you have as a bouncer, when people are drunk, when you break it simply down, if they're too drunk, they don't understand. But if they're just a tipsy and you break things down, they realize it's stupid to fight. And I just showed that all the time, and then 1 of the 10 times, maybe, yes, there's a fight. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you do that the correct way, meaning that if a lot of people are watching, yeah, it sounds bad, but you're going to have to go, like headbutting, like you got to do some stuff that when the other people see, they go like, I never want to get into a fight with these guys. That's what you have to do. So that's where I'm most notorious for, because they say, when I saw this guy fight, it goes, yeah, but that was that 1 time. And that was a guy I've warned 5, 6, 7 times in a row. And then still, and then, then my fuse is very short, of course. If I warn you so many times, then we'll go. So yeah, it's fun to read all over these stories because a lot of them are popping up, but I'm not going to put too many of them in the book.
But do you think it's a combination of your knowledge in mixed martial arts and your people's knowledge that you didn't fight a lot? Because you knew if someone would do something, you could harm them. So you chose the right way, and then, if they kept going, you would end up...
Yeah, I always had this. I just wrote this story about this guy. We were at a party, and it was a party from my father-in-law. He had a big bus company that brought tourists to Spain, and they had hotels there, and it was big. And there was one of these guys. Suddenly, I'm at the party, and people started screaming. And somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Jan is knocking people out, including women." So I'm running on the dance floor, and then he knocks out my mother-in-law. But I see something is wrong. He's got foam on his mouth. He's like, he's not. I know the guy, so I don't want to beat this guy up, because I know something is wrong with him. It's not his fault, Something happened with drinking or drugs, whatever it is, but it's not really his fault. So I grab him from the back by the arms and say, "Let's go outside and we pick a tree, and then you can hit the tree. What about that?" So I start pushing him outside, and then this older guy sits there. While we're passing, he sits in his chair. He says, "Hey, Jan, what's up?" And Jan freaking knocks the guy out. This was a guy who was already retired and who was there just for the party. So now I'm pushing him harder out. And now we're outside. This is like a week before I had a Thai boxing match, I remember, because it was funny. We come outside, and what I didn't know that was his son-in-law was behind me. Now, I don't think the son-in-law knew that he knocked people out and women out, because now suddenly they wanted to attack me. But it was like one of the craziest things. So they were, right away, I moved backwards, so I have him in front of me, and I go literally this, boom, boom, fight's over, 2 knockouts, right? And I look at my girlfriend at the time, I go, I guess I'm in shape for next week, right? Because I had the match coming up. And then I hear Jan, he's screaming, and he stands up and he comes running towards me. And I want to kick him in the head, but because he came a little faster, I knocked him with my shin in the face, yeah. And that was very freaking scary because broke his skull, broke his teeth flying, jaw broke, He was in the hospital for 2 days and was talking about razor blades. He was shut down. I thought, now I can't sleep because I know his family. I knew it was not him. I knew it was alcohol or drugs, so it really freaked me out. I had to go to court for that one, and thankfully everything was okay afterwards. But you see, sometimes things just go too hard. And I don't want that, So as a bouncer, when I was a bouncer and I see people who are drunk, I just think about me. You say stupid stuff when you're drunk. That's not a reason to beat somebody up. Now, if he starts hitting people, still, if they're really gone, you can hold them and just talk to them. I'd rather do that than letting him wake up with a face beat in, not knowing what happened. Why would you do that? So I always put myself in that situation. And not that I'm always a happy drunk. Because otherwise I wouldn't drink. But, I know people make mistakes. So I always try to be the best. But then, once it goes, that means you push too many buttons, then I'll go too. And I'll turn it up.
Does it still happen that people think when people are drunk or they meet you, they're like, "Oh, I can't fight Bas," or
no,
it's done? They're not approaching you to fight.
Well, but that whole story in Sweden happened with the 5 bouncers. After that, I never had a problem anymore. That was, I think, in 2000 or so. So I put 3 in the hospital. It was like a freaking nightmare. They put me in jail there. It was like they wanted to keep me for 9 months. It was insane. But then the newspaper article said that people, they put on the Swedish Post, they put the DVD, Bas Rutten street fighting techniques, right? This is the guy. And then the article said they were talking to the people, to the bouncers, and they were so happy the police came because they couldn't handle me. It was 5 against 1. So my sales went through the roof over in Sweden. It was the most insane thing, But one of them was apparently a cop. Like they need an off-duty cop, but still he was a cop. And he attacked me too. Now, he didn't tell me he was a cop, but still, if he would tell me he's a cop and he hits me, well, I hit you back. So I knocked him out too. Of course, you see. So, and that was a problem. And that's why they wanted to keep me for such a long time. But thankfully, everything worked out well. There was the guards were really nice because they were all fans. So I had my own place, my TV. They came in, bring me coffee. They played cards with me. They actually let me make my first phone call to Holland. So this is a funny story. My wife doesn't really like it, but I think it's hilarious. Before this all happens, I'm standing outside that bar, and I'm saying, I'm on the phone with my wife. I say, "Hey, I'm going to go party right now." And she goes, "Why are you laughing so hard?" I say, "I'm drunk. I'm having a good time." She goes, No. You're there with 2 Swedish blonde girls, aren't you?" I go, "Honey, alcohol is my number 1 love right now, so don't worry about it," right? So I hang up the phone. This whole thing happens, and then they allow me, once I went from the police station to jail, they literally threw me to a real jail. When the guards came in, they said, "Did you make a phone call?" I said, "No, if somebody can." He says, "Take my cell phone. Call your wife." So I call my wife, and I go, I said, she said, "Where are you?" She's, of course, freaking out. I go, "Honey, got some good and some bad news. I got to be fast." She goes, "What do you want to hear first?" She says, "The good news." I said, "I didn't have sex with 2 Swedish girls." And then she says, "What's the bad news?" I said, "I'm in jail." She goes, "You think that's funny?" I go, "Oh, that's pretty funny, But at the time, it was a little less funny. I got to be honest with you, because if you look at 6 or 9 months for not doing anything other than defending yourself, that's, that was not fun.
Crazy. It's funny that you say when you were a bouncer, you actually use like a therapy session to get the guys calm down and to calm the situation down. Like, it also sometimes it happens where you have 2 guys that want to fight and you see someone getting in the middle and then that guy gets punched. You know what I mean? So But I want to continue to the Pancrase days, because I think that's a very interesting era of fighting. And last time you had an amazing story about your first fight where you showed up and it was a 30-minute fight and then you won the fight. But I want to continue on with that story. So obviously your first fight in the Pancrase era was amazing. But can you continue on with your how your second fight went in that Pancrase era?
Okay, so the guy that I knocked out in the first fight was considered the number 4 fighter from Japan. So pride jumped into my body immediately after the fight. Dumbass. That's the one thing you never want to do, right? Be proud. Because then you start taking it easier on training and easier on those kind of things. So now I worked out hard and trained hard, but I remember before I went on the plane, I was drunk, to go to Japan to fight. I shouldn't have done that, And then I got sick also when I was there. So that might have been done with the drinking. It was just a stupid decision. Whatever it was, I was sick as a dog the second fight. And they, after the first knockout, because it was so devastating, because that guy spent in the hospital 2 days, I think they did this to make me tired. So they woke me up at 8 o'clock in the morning. And you have to understand, coming from Holland to Japan, I don't know if you ever went, nighttime is daytime. So that means that you're going to fall asleep 7 o'clock in the morning because that's 11 o'clock at night for you. So all night, it's like daytime for you because you come from Holland. So I'm at 7 o'clock in the morning. They woke me up because at 8 o'clock I had to take a cab to the Shinkansen, the bullet train, and then drive with the bullet train for like 2 or 3 hours, then in another cab. And I'm traveling for 8 freaking hours on the day of the fight. And I always thought they did that on purpose to see if they could get me tired, right? So now I'm throwing up. My manager, Clovis Dupre, he's carrying, because I never had a coach, I trained myself. So he's carrying all my luggage. And I told him, I said, I need to go to the hotel first before I fight. And he goes, no, you can't. I said, well, then I'm not going to fight. It's like I'm sweating as a dog. I feel sick. Let me shower, and then I will go to the fight. So they did that, thankfully. I checked in, and then I went to the place, but I was still throwing up. I didn't feel good. And then the fight starts, and I didn't want to be there. He got me in an armbar, and I wanted to tap. But then I heard the audience chanting for him. And then my ego, thankfully pride at that moment is good, got over. And I got out of the armbar, and then I knocked him out like 30 seconds later with a knee to the liver. And that was a badass move also. That was the first time I used breathing against my opponent because I didn't have a lot of power. I was sick. I stood in the clinch and I pulled his triceps to the side from the other side. So I'm seeing breathing. And on the third time when he breathes in, I knee him. Because when you get hit at the moment you're breathing in, well, you can do 5,000 sit-ups a day. It's not going to help you. You go down because you're not flexing. And he went down like a freak, like I shot him with a shotgun. And if you look at the knee, you go like, he went down on that. But you'll see me looking down. And on the third one, I knee him right in the gut. And he's out. And that was the moment that I said to myself, okay, from this moment on, I will never, even if he's the number 200 from the world, I will always prepare 100%. I will never drink again. It was something I had to go through in order to be not a crazy guy, because you get full of yourself really fast. If that's the number 4 guy and this is the number 5, I don't even have to train so hard. It was stupid, but thankfully, big lesson learned. And from that moment on, it never happened.
I find it funny how you talk about the breathing also. Was it an intuition thing, or how did it occur that you noticed the breathing?
Well, he was breathing heavy, and I just saw him in the clinch and pulling his triceps to the side. I'm seeing his belly go. And I know that, that's why fighters or trainers will tell their fighters when it's later in the fight, like the 3rd, 4th round, when people start getting tired, go for the body. Because chances that he doesn't flex at the moment you connect with the body shot are going to be higher, of course, because now he's out of breath. And we all know from sparring, sometimes you get tapped on the body, and if you don't expect it, but you were breathing in, you're going to freaking feel this. I mean, I do this with a finger with people. I put it on the liver, and I say, breathe in. And I breathe in, I just do this. And they go, shit! I go, that's just my finger. So you can understand what happens if I give you a freaking body shot. So I knew that was very effective, but I never used that in training, because normally you never see that, you never look at it. But I think somehow, because we talked about it in the first fight, I was so in control suddenly. I never had that experience when I was Thai boxing in Holland. I was just a wild man. I wasn't Peter Urs. I wasn't Ernesto Hoos, Rob Kamer, all these freaking great Thai boxers. I was just powerful. And I just knocked people out. But it wasn't pretty. It was a lot of freaking power. And that's why I could do. But if I would face a guy like Peter, that would be a big problem for me, because I can put that guy away and then I'm going to run out of gas within 3 minutes. That's going to be a problem, you see. But then once I went to Japan suddenly, and I believe it was the 30-minute round, it was the no weight classes, where I realized, wait a minute, if I go ballistic the first 3 minutes and I can't put him away, I got 27 more minutes to go. I got to watch out. So I put these big R's from rustig, relax, on my hands to make me calm and to not freaking get angry if they hit me, because I'm a hothead. But then suddenly when I was in the fight, everything became, it was the most amazing thing. I was so in control. I heard the people that I needed to hear. I hear conversations from people sitting at ringside who are speaking in English. It was the most insane thing. I was completely in control. And that happened in the second fight as well, I guess, because think about breathing and then kneeing something. You know, it was really a weird thing to do. I would have it as drills. Like somebody gives me a right roundhouse kick, I'll block it. I like to turn. I have a wide stance, so I turn all the way in. And then when they pull the leg back, what they're doing? They're breathing in, right? So as soon as they pull the leg back, that's when I go with the straight to the body. And in training works all the freaking time. People go, whoop, they go down. And you don't even have to hit hard because they're breathing in. They're recoiling on a kick. And I guess that somehow during the fight, it came back. And I go, well, might as well try. And then, so when I saw him breathing heavy, I think on the third one, I'm going to knee him. And that's when I got him.
When you got put in the armbar, did you have any idea what an armbar was? Like, how was your ground game at that time?
Dude, I'm in the guard, right? I'm holding him like this in the guard. This is my hold. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't know I had to do this or this or this. You know, I was doing this. He only has to open up his chest and there's zero grip. I had no understanding for submission. So he was just, he got me right away. I mean, I still had to learn.
But it's funny that if you look back at your record, if I say it right, you have more submissions than knockouts. So how did you go from not knowing anything about the ground game or a little about the ground game to enjoying it and exploiting it? How did that happen?
Well, it happened, and I don't know if I told it last time with John Blooming when we were in Japan. So I'm working with John Blooming. He's with us. You know John Blooming, right? Everybody knows John Blooming in Holland. He's like the highest graduated black belt next to Masoyama. Masoyama is, I think, 11th degree. John Blooming is the highest gaijin, 10th degree Kyokushin. And he's coming there to check out the show. And we're walking on the street in Japan, and suddenly we hear hybrid wrestling, Pancrase. We hear that voice. And we're looking to the side, and there's this building, and they have a gigantic screen on the building. This is 94, guys. This is all the way back. And I'm talking about an incredible screen. Japan the technology was always far ahead. And the first thing we see is me knocking out my first opponent. It was the preview for our fight the next day. So we go, oh, shit. So we're about all the fighters. We see the preview. And I see this guy sitting in the half guard, and he's going for an inverted heel hook, which I didn't know what was. But I see him grabbing it. He's falling backward. The guy taps. And I look at John Blooming, and I go, oh, I should remember that move. So the next day I'm fighting, and I'm in that position. So I go, might as well try it. So I grab the foot, and I fall backwards. Now, I never did this before. So I didn't have any clue the amount of damage that I would do. So we heard him pop. I go, pop, and I go, because we heard his knee pop. Well, it wasn't his knee, because he feels, and he looks at the referee, he says, no, I'm good. And I'm looking at the referee, and he looks at me, because we heard a pop, right? What we didn't know was the shin bone, that was what was popped. It was snapped. So then he kicks me with that shin on my thigh, but I just lean into it, and that's where it completely snapped, and he fell on the ground. So this is when I got my 5th degree. That was an honorary black belt from John Blooming, because he said, dude, you telling me a day before that you never saw the move, you got to remember it. The next day you win a freaking fight with it. I've never seen anybody doing that. So then he gave me an honorary 5th degree. But that was also the moment that I realized, whoa, submissions are way more dangerous than boxing is. We always believed that the strikers were the tough guys. Well, if you really think about it, a submission artist has the power to dislocate any joint in your body and to break pretty much any bone in your body. That's a pretty skill to have, right? And I'm talking about a blue belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He'll fight on the street. Oh, he can do whatever he wants to do. And that's just a blue belt. So you can only imagine once you start picking it up. So I started becoming very vocal. And I fought Leon van Dijk, a Dutch guy who was 19 years old, super strong guy, great striker, super talent. And found one guy who wanted to train with me. And Leon was one of those guys, I could call him in at 3 o'clock at night because I'm crazy. I will wake up and dream of submission. I go, oh, I got to try this out. I will call him. He would go, yeah, we go to the gym, and we immediately would try out. And then we started rolling together. No instructions, no nothing, just seeing. And then I said, wait a minute, I think I can make this better, that move. I can escape. Do this to me. I can say, see, I can escape. So what can we do to not make it escape? So then I start coming up with my own submissions. I won a bunch of fights with submissions people never had. You know, now there's fighters, they say, oh, I won with the boss with the neck crank. You know, this is a thing that I just came up with. So I started to become obsessed with it because suddenly I realized all the possibilities that you can have. It's endless. It's one of these games that you can never master. You know, So I became obsessed. It was Post-its over the Hill House with little notes, and my wife, I would wake her up. I probably told this last time. I woke her up at least 6 times because I would dream a submission, and then I wake her up. I put her in that submission, and then I would say shoulder, right? Yeah, shoulder hurts, okay. And I would write it down, and the next day in the morning I would go and use it in training. And during the day, I say, lean over. I would get her in a choke. I say, are you getting dizzy or this is holding your throat? And she goes, I'm getting dizzy. I go, see, it's a blood choke. Okay, that's weird. So I was doing this all day long. But, once you become obsessed with something and you do it 2 or 3 times a day, you become good. And that was the coolest part, because after my last loss against Ken, my next 8 fights I won by submission. 7 with submission victories and 1 with submission dominance. So now suddenly they were like, what the heck happened here? But it was just because I became obsessed with it, and I was doing it 2 or 3 times a day. And when I was home, my mind was constantly busy with it. It's like, you should have seen the house with all those little Post-its and combinations that I wrote down, because fighting is all do you guys train?
Jiu-jitsu.
Okay, so imagine you're sitting mount and you go for a straight armbar, right? Super basic. Everybody knows that position. And everybody knows you're going to do it. But if I find a different way, a setup that you never noticed before, I'm going to catch you. A distraction or whatever it is, a little thing that I'm going to add on, do it a little different than anybody else, and then you're going to be successful with it. Now, against a good guy, you will be successful once because he's a good guy and he will never make that mistake again. But once is enough to win a fight. You see, so I realized, wait a minute, if I create 3-4 different setups for every submission out there, I can start jumping back and forth to every setup, and then poof, suddenly I catch him. And it was true, it just started working. And they always say you're only as good as your sparring partner. Well, I had one for 90% of my fights. And that was after a year of competing in Pancrase, where I had nobody, and I just trained on a bag 2 times a day, 12 rounds. That was my first year in Pancrase. You see, but then when I found Leon, now suddenly I started submitting everybody. I never lost a fight anymore. That was the last time I lost was against Ken. And then my last 22, I never lost, man. But it was because I made that decision. And this is what I tell people. Yes, I'm good. I got some talent, but I'm not freaking BJ Penn. I'm not freaking all these crazy freaks. I'm not like that. I still have to put in a lot of work. And I just did it a lot, And if you do something a lot, and especially when you love it, because then you want to do it, well, then you become good.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bas, but did most of your submissions come through leg locks?
A lot, but I'm very proud, because if you look at what people don't also realize is I have 43 submission victories, not victories, because Pancrase had the rope escapes, right? And I truly believe the rope escapes were the reason all these Pancrase fighters became so good. Because if you think about it, you have to fight completely different. You have to fight very strategical. Like if I'm going to go for a submission, let's say I'm in the center of the ring and I want to go for an armbar, now I know that, if I'm close to the rope, well, if I do the armbar now, he's got the rope and then he can use a rope escape. So I got to drag him to the center of the ring first. Then if I go for an armbar but I lose it, now I'm in a bad position away from the rope. You see, you start thinking different. And then sometimes you get a leg, say a leg lock. The guy grabs the rope. They restart the fight. This is fight number 2 of the night then. Because normally it would have stopped. But now, so you have more ring time because you're fighting more. I had fights where I submitted somebody 5 times. 5 times. And then on the final time, that was the maximum amount. The fight was over. But that's kind of 5 fights in one night that I have. Because every time I get back on my feet. So we're just doing it a lot. I think from Pancrase, that was a small organization. I think we have 7 UFC champions coming from Pancrase. And I think that was the reason. I always told people, why don't they bring that back? Because I think it's a really cool game because the whole strategy is different now. You really have to watch out to stay away from the ropes. But then again, if you miss a situation, now you're in the middle of the ring and it's harder for you to, you see, you're completely thinking different. But the thing is, you're thinking. And I think in fighting, really thinking is very important, and awareness and where you are. And I'm guarantee you, man, that really helped me. Just that rule really helped me. And if I just by myself make sure that I never grab the rope, then in my mind, I never lost a fight. That happened twice only that I did it. I was with the armbar, but I got caught in the second fight. This was a rope escape, which was weird because I was laying next to the rope here, but somehow I only saw the rope over there and I dragged him through the whole ring to the other side. I go, what the hell? Later when I saw the video, I go, what did I do? I could have simply put my arm here almost. I dragged him, and then I had the rope escape, and then I knocked him out. But from that moment on, I started realizing, wait a minute, I never want to do a rope escape again. Because if I do a rope escape in a real fight, I would have been lost. And that always worked. I never did a rope escape.
Do you
again.
think the same is happening now with the cage? So a lot of fighters use the cage in their advantage. For example, the grapplers,
Yep.
they go to the cage, try to put their opponent against the cage because then they cannot escape. Do you think that's the switch that happened
Yeah.
because of the cage?
Yes, but now also a lot of these fighters, they want with the, if you're a fighter, you're good at getting up. You want the fence against you, the back, because that's when you can use the fence to draw yourself up. See, so now these wrestlers have to watch out as well. Now a wrestler, yeah, they have just a lot of freaking different ways to keep you down. So if you fight a top wrestler, yeah, it's going to be very hard. Even if you're against the cage and you want to wall walk up, it's going to be still very hard because they're just phenomenal wrestlers. But normally, it's a give and take right now because yes, that fence, as long as I keep him stocked up against it and his head is all the way like this, yes, you're in control. But if this guy pushes himself a little bit away, now he might use it to get back up onto his feet with a wall walk.
Is that also the reason why Karate Combat has a different kind of stage? So you cannot use...
Karate Combat really wanted to, use it's a 45-degree angle, the walls, and they can use these to escape, but you can also use these to run up and to make flying kicks. We also saw another guy because there's takedowns in karate. You can take somebody down and they can rain down strikes for 5 seconds, which we might change that rule for even better. I don't want to say yet what it is because I need to make sure it's going to be happening, but that's going to make it even better what's going to happen now. But there's still going to be ground and pound involved. And we saw already a guy taking somebody down, ran up the wall to get more height, and then dropping the guy on his head. You see, so now people start getting very innovative with the wall. They want to really use it. We saw Raymond Daniels, he gets pushed in the corner, he just runs out the corner because he can simply walk up and then walks away. And we saw him also taking somebody down, and then he ran to the other side and he started hitting him from north-south position in the ground and pound. You see, so fighters start becoming very aware of it now. They also start building a wall in their place so they get used to it.
Okay, so Bas, I'm still amazed by the whole Pancrase era and how you experienced that. And I'm really curious, like, I can imagine when you won your fights there and you were like the new guy from the Netherlands. How did you celebrate those wins? I don't want to get you in too much trouble, but how was it like? How did the people perceive you, and how did you celebrate those wins in Japan?
It's really weird for me. Winning and losing, it never really. For me, it was always if I do my best, it's good. If I wouldn't pull the trigger and then I would lose, I own that, But if I would go full power and I try everything and I would lose, well, whatever. He was the best guy, so I never had this big thing. But I also had that with winning. Really weird. I love it. It's great, and at the moment it's great. But it's not like, oh, when I became a world champion, literally, oh my God, you're a world champion. When they said it at home, I go, yeah, I am. I didn't even think about that. I would still go back to my first fight when I was 12 and I knocked out the bully for the first time. That to me was way more because the first time I stood up for myself. That's way more powerful. But I never really hang on to winning. Of course, I won. Maybe it would have been different if I would have been losing. But I see guys who lose and they're completely crushed. They're crying because they worked so hard for it. I go, dude, this is just from above. They're telling you right now, you're going to have to work out harder. This is how it works. Some people win, some people lose, and if you lose, that should spark you to train even harder. So, yeah, I liked it. I think the first Pancrase title, that was great. Peter Urch was there, so that was nice also. He was in the audience. And then the world title, of course, for the UFC, because that was historic for Europe, was the first European who got a UFC title. So I thought that was really cool. But to say, I would never walk around, like you see guys walking around with their belts. You see, I never have that. I would, when I come to an event for a signing, they always go like, why didn't you bring your belts? I go, why would I bring my belts? It's kind of weird. I already did that. They know why. And I understand, maybe I should do it for the fans, but I don't know. It's I never paid too much attention to that. It's the same as somebody told me one day, oh man, you already won your last 11 fights. And I go, oh shit. He goes, what? I go, I wish you wouldn't have said that. I go, what do you mean? I go, because my mind, I didn't think about that. Now I'm hoping that I'm not going to try to, not lose, because then you become one of those fighters who's not going to be exciting anymore, right? Because you just want to win. You want to keep holding on to the win, and you want to make that record stronger. But thankfully, somehow I shook it off, and I just kept on going. But a thing like that could really ruin you. Someone brings attention to it, say, you won your last 11 fights. It's like when they say, if you win your next one, then you're going to be this and this. Well, then the next one's going to have a lot of pressure on you. You see, because that will set everything up. So that's why I never want to pay attention to that kind of stuff. And but thankfully, I just swiped it off, I guess, and I just.
But do you think it's also part of being Dutch that you don't, with the belts, for example, that you don't take them with you? Because in Dutch we would say, doe maar gewoon normaal, want dan doe je al gek genoeg. So the little translation would be, act normal, because then you're already crazy enough. Do you think that also plays a part? Because we see a lot of UFC fighters who won their first fight and they act like they're world champion already. So
yeah, in Holland that's really good what you say there. Yeah, doe maar
gewoon normaal. Yeah,
doe maar normaal, doe je al gek genoeg, and that's really Dutch. Yes. So that could be very, because if you really think about it, did you ever see Ernesto Hoos, Peter Earth, Robin Dekkers, all these guys walking around with the belts? No, they don't, They know. People know. You don't need to do that. That's what all these guys, they told me, yeah, I want more money. I want more this. I want more that. I say, you need to be winning. And once you win, you can demand all that you're asking right now. But right now you're losing. So stop doing that. Start training harder. Don't complain. And just, become better. That's when you start making money, because then you're going to say, oh, for that money, I'm not going to fight anymore. It's either you're going to give me this. You see, now the ball is in your court. So, yeah, no, I believe that also with the Dutch guys, we're more, what is that, nuchter? What is that in English?
Sober.
Yeah, I know it's sober when
but
we're drinking, but
say
it's
sober
that's
as a human being. It's a sober human. And yeah, I don't know. Could you say it?
No, man.
Yeah, because sober, we think about drinking, and that's, but yeah, just be normal. Just officially humility, if you think about it, should be that, because humility means living in accordance with the truth. Because people think humility, this guy's weak, he's this. No, he just lives in accordance with the truth. So he knows, I got my title. I don't have to show it to everybody else, because, then we start, that's pride.
Dutch people are humble. So a lot of Dutch people are humble, because last I saw an interview of Gegard Mousasi. They were talking about you, about how you said about Gegard that he's a great fighter and maybe one of the best ever in the Dutch MMA community. And then he said the same about you. So I think it's the part of being humble. I think that's what we see in the fighters.
And maybe nowadays it's a little bit harder. When you become popular, you get the likes, the followers, the views, and now everybody thinks they're a superstar, of course. But Bas, how would you? Let's say you have a student that you can tell he's becoming a little bit more. He thinks too highly of himself and he becomes a little bit cocky. How would you put him back to earth?
Oh, this is going to get dropped with body shots. For sure. And in the past, I would literally go on purpose. I would go the day before, drink, and I would come in the morning, and he would smell my alcohol. I said, let's spar. And I would just drop him constantly to the body or something. I said, this is me being drunk. And this is what you're going to face, people better than me who are not drunk. So good luck with that. Most of the time that puts them back on earth. It's stupid. And I also tell them about my experience. My pride experience in the second fight. I could have lost that fight. If it was regular MMA rules, I would have lost that fight. You see, so there's mistakes. That's like fighting with anger. When emotions, you want to stay away from this. One fight with Kengo Watanabe. I had that fight, who they set up for me, and I think we talked about that last time. And I always tell my students, I say, watch that fight. And he says, why? I said, because there you see me out of control. Like, I'm not pretty. I'll knock him out. But it's like, I just lose control because I'm so emotional. I just really wanted to freaking hurt this guy, which is something you don't want to do in fighting, because then you start loading up, you start telegraphing. Because if I normally hit somebody from here, paf! But now, I'm angry, I'm going to do this. I'm going to load it up because I really want to hit him hard. Well, now I'm telegraphing. You do that against the Peter Earths, you're going to get knocked out because you're doing this, paf! He's going to get you. You see, because these guys are at that level. So that's why I like to dig to my opponents I give them little tiny digs during interviews. I'm not the guy who says, oh, he's nothing, he's but I never do that. I do it way better because I'm talking normal about him. And I say, what do you think of your opponent? I say, he's great. I'm just better in every area. But he's a good guy. I just waffle it off like that. Well, I know that my opponent only hears that. That little thing that I mumbled. Oh, I'm just better in every way, in every aspect of the fighting game. But that's okay. He's a great fighter, but he only hears that, and that makes him angry. And once he's angry, he'll start making mistakes. And that's what I want in a fight, because now he starts loading up. He starts taking unnecessary risks.
But what would you say to your students who think too highly of their opponents? So sometimes fighters think, yeah, oh wait, he knocked out that guy, he fought with that guy. So what would you say, tell them?
It's all perception. Everybody's flesh and blood. You know, it doesn't matter what the package comes in. It doesn't really matter. An example that I use is I had my cousin. He was fighting. He was 17. He was young, and he fought this older guy, like 25. First Thai boxing match. Was a bigger guy. He was like 8 kilos heavier. This was all the way back. Everything went right, and but he wasn't no problem with that. But the guy had tattoos, and at that time he was afraid of the guy because he had tattoos. And I look at him, I say, Hein, you understand that if tattoos would make you strong, there wouldn't be a free space in my entire body. I will be free tattooed from top to bottom because if that makes me stronger. And then he looked at me, he goes, oh, yeah. I go, exactly. And that's the same with people. Yes, some people, they look freaking monstrous, but that doesn't mean anything. You know, the more muscle they have and more look like a bodybuilder, they didn't spend a lot of time on their freaking fighting. They spent more time on the looks. And most of the guys, these guys who constantly want to look the best, very insecure. Most of the time. There's always exceptions to the rules. But most of the time, those guys, I like, you know, the guy you see in the gym the whole time, checking himself out, pulling his skin on his abs tight so they can make a picture. Like the most insane things. They're so busy with themselves. They are more important. That's not fighting. Fighting, you know, you need to put your opponent on a better spot, but you never can think that he's the best guy, you know, and I will tell them it's an unhealthy way of thinking. Like if they fight me, if I'm going to fight Fedor Emelianenko, what are you going to do, boss? I'm going to beat him. Whoa, you think high of yourself. What do you think? You think it's healthy for me to say before a fight, oh yeah, I'm probably going to lose that fight. That's not a great way to go into a fight. I need to be 100% convinced that I'm going to beat him, you know, and then you take it from there. And that's what I tell them. I say, you take it from there, you know, you just go all the way. And if he's better, well, then he's going to have to work for it. Make sure that he knows he's been in a freaking fight with you. You know, and once you start talking like that, it's not about winning titles. I say this many times to other fighters. Of course it is because we want that. But I know some fighters who never had a world title that every other fighter is afraid of. You know, you have guys like a Clay Guida, or, you know, the guys who never became champion, but boy, you fight that guy, you're going to be in a fight, you know, and you have a lot of these guys. And all the other fighters, they respect the hell out of those guys. And I always say, as long as your peers, as long as they respect you, don't care about the people in the audience. They have no clue. They do a karate match or a Thai boxing match in the gym, and they think they can do that under pressure. They have no idea the difference between fighting in a nice, safe environment or doing the same thing with people screaming at you and your family and your friends being in the audience. That's a whole different animal, because now you got to control those emotions, something I didn't have under control. Like, I was really good in training, but then in Thai boxing, I was just blasting because I was too nervous. I wanted to get it over with fast, and, you know, and thankfully I was strong and I could do it. But it's not a great way of fighting, because against a good guy, I was going to lose. You know, so it's just, again, like I did with the people, as a bouncer, you break it down. Yes, he's good, he did this, but he's still human. You remember that all the way back when somebody tagged him and he was still wobbly? That means you can knock him out. It means you see, if there's a guy who been hit, freaking Mark Hunt, kicked in the head by Mirko Krokop, takes a knee, gets up and fights again. Yeah, that's scary. You know, you go like, he kicked him full in the head with the shin bone. He takes a knee, gets up, and then he keeps on fighting. Then I go like, okay, yeah, against the guy though in mixed martial arts, I'm not even going to hit him. I'm going to go in there and go for submissions. Why would I waste all my energy on a guy like Mark Hunt, who you're not going to knock out anyway, unless you're Melvin Manhoef? Ooh, he did it, right? He knocked him out hard. But you see, everybody can be knocked out. It's just, you know, and it doesn't matter if you win or lose. Give it everything you got. And if you do that at the very end, you're going to be happy. Don't worry about it. But if you don't pull the trigger, like I said before, and you're waiting, yeah, now you have a reason to be angry at yourself because you didn't really do it. Let it go, man. And the people enjoy that. There's so many fighters out there who lost fights. Chuck Liddell, what did he lose? His last 5, 6 now. Everybody loves the freaking guy. Why? Because he always comes to fight. It doesn't matter anymore for him winning or losing. Of course, he wants to win, but he just comes and he rolls the dice. He's not going to fight different. He's not going to fight more preservative. No, because everybody wants to see Chuck Liddell. So he puts it all online for the people. That's what he's doing, and people respect that.
Okay, talking about the mental game and feeling pressure, how was it for you to transition to the UFC? Because you came in with a lot of hype, and how was that transition for you?
Nothing. It was really weird. I remember I went to the UFC the day before. I jumped in the cage, and it's gigantic. It's 9 meters, over 9 meters, and it's circle. And I go, dude, nobody can lock me up in the corner here. I love this better than fighting in a ring. And finally, I was able to close my freaking hands. Wanted to do that. I was kicking without freaking shoes. I was really looking forward to the UFC. Yeah, so I didn't have that pressure. It was really weird. But I was, I had a lot of main events in Japan, and a lot of, we always shows 15,000 people, but at the time was a really great number. Later on when Pride Fighting Championship came, I went to the Saitama Super Arena, 45 and 48,000. 45,000 would be a small show, considered to be a small show. It's insane. But we fought at Budokan, like all these, the Sumo Arena, all these really beautiful places, and they hold like 15,000 people. So going from an event like that to the UFC, yeah, was a really big difference. Thankfully, I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself.
I'm wondering, how did that go? Like, how did they contact you? Were they like, Bas, you're amazing. What you do is what we need. How did that go? So how did that start up?
That was John Peretti. He was the matchmaker at the time. And he came to Japan to watch me fight because he heard about me and he was following me. And then after the fight, when I knocked the guy out, he says, hey, I'm from the UFC. We want you in the UFC. And I go, okay, I would love to come to the UFC, but I got 3 more fights on this contract, and that's it. I will come to you. So we signed with the UFC. I let Pancrase know that I was going to stop with them because they knew eventually I wanted to go to the UFC, but then when the matchmaker came, it made it so easy. That's why I'm looking at the poster here. It's so funny because they say, is this the next UFC heavyweight champion? And it says, the Bas Rutten is the world's greatest martial artist, was going to enter the octagon. And the people go like, whoa, that title. I say, no, they messed up right there. He's going, what do you mean? I say, I told him specifically he's the greatest looking mixed martial artist. But they forgot the word looking. They put it on. So that's my joke. I always put it on that poster. But it was a badass poster. And it was cool because it was something different. I lost the spark in Japan because, it's not because I kept winning. And it's not, and then, it becomes too easy. And for me, I knew I needed a change. I already had a bunch of injuries, but I knew that if I made the change fast, before the real injury was going to push through, I need to go to the UFC. So I just wanted to go to the UFC.
That's amazing. Plus, I'm wondering, because you were talking about winning and you won a lot, you lost some. How would you say your first loss felt? Like, how did you cope with that?
Not at all, not big at all. It was a toe hold, It was from Funaki, and for the people, I always say this when I do these public speaking events. It's not like this is your toe and they hold the toe. I say I saw a guy break his shin bone with a toe hold, so it's a freaking move, and I didn't even know what it was. So when the guy made it on me, I knew it hurt. That's what I knew. That was the first time I felt pain in a fight. And my ankle was freaking swollen up, of course. The next day, it wasn't fun to go back home. But mentally, it didn't do anything to me because I knew it was my own mistake. I didn't do my ground fighting, And then I lost again by submission. I knew it was me, was to blame. And then I lost a 3rd time by submission. And I'm a very sore loser already. And then I said, okay, it's either I'm going to learn it now or I'm going to quit. It's one of these two. Because, yes, I might become a world champion, but then I lose the next fight by way of submission. It's stupid, It's part of the freaking job. Learn the freaking submissions. And then when I started rolling and I realized what it really was, and then I fell in love with it, then it became my passion. I didn't want to do anything else. It was such a great, man, it's so amazing. Your mind, like I have ADD, but once you're rolling, everything stops, because you're too focused to do your own thing, So just peace in your mind, So I wanted to roll a lot. You have no idea while I'm talking to you. There's 2 other stories going on in my head. It's that I have to constantly fight off. It's really weird how my mind works, But once you fight or when you're sparring, that's gone. Like fighting. Oh, I would love fighting. Because you're nervous? Yeah, I might be nervous a little bit in the dressing room, but I also knew that once the bell goes, I'm like, oh, peace. My mind, cut off from everything and just one focus. I would love that.
That's also what Sammy has to deal with when he talks to me, because my mind also goes all the way around. So
Yeah, man,
I know what you're feeling.
when Amir gets a message or he sees something happening, he's gone. He's gone. But
I get triggered very fast. Yeah.
It's good.
But I can.
People have no idea. Like my wife says, you're reading. What music you're listening to? And I give her my AirPods, and she goes, what the heck is that? It's white noise, and it's all the way up. So I hear this. That's how I read a book. Because that cuts everything out from the outside, and then I can focus on what I'm reading. It's the most insane thing. But if I don't do that, I hear ping somewhere, then whoop up there. It's like loss of concentration. But those things really help me just blast white noise in my ear.
So back in the days, did you really have like a serious game plan every time you went into the ring? Like, did you prepare for any opponent? Like, okay, this opponent stands this way and his weakness is that punch, or did you just go in and fight?
Yeah, that was really weird. I never did that. Yeah. I was talking about it last week to somebody. I don't know. I wouldn't even know before I would go in the fight. I didn't even study him, didn't look at him. I didn't even know if it was a southpaw or not. Because I'm training with southpaws and with regular people. If I don't have a problem in training, why would I have a problem with them? This was my thing. And in striking, I was not going to have a problem with these guys. I was, like I said, in Holland I wasn't. But suddenly when the click came, I was just the best striker in Pancrase. I can say that. Later Sammy Shield came. He took that over for me, of course. 4-time freaking K1 champion. But that was before Sammy came. I truly believe I was the best striker. So nobody wanted to strike with me anyway. They all wanted to go. I always had to defend the takedown. And then I go like, shit. That's the cool thing about my submissions. If I like 43 submissions I have, like 14 that I finished with, but 43 submissions. But then also the stats, they say he never took anybody down. So that's the coolest one. So I never took anybody down to go for a submission. That meant they took me down, and then I would submit them. So I like that stat as well. That was the Fight Metrics did those stats. And also Fight Metrics said that till this day I still hold the highest striking accuracy in MMA. That's badass too. I never knew. And they know how many minutes you fought and hours you fought. It's a cool little company who keeps all the statistics from everything that you did.
I think it's very interesting because recently Leon Edwards, the welterweight champ, he came out and he said that the first time he had to fight Kamaru Usman, he went to the United States, did like a very specific training camp to defend his takedowns, and the whole camp was just resting. And then he lost the fight.
Yeah.
And then the second time he fought him, he didn't want to focus too much on Kamaru Usman and his wrestling, and he just wanted to focus on his skills. And then he beat him twice. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do have to say, like once I fought Randleman, you better believe I was wrestling a lot, right? Of that people were taking a shot because freaking Kevin Randleman. But on the one side, also, listen, if you know 3-4 ways to defend a takedown against a guy like Randleman, who's just been called out wrestler of the century, not of a decade, in Ohio State. I mean, that guy, good luck trying to stop a takedown from him because he was just a freak of nature. So then, of course, I would work on takedown defense. But unfortunately, with that fight, like 3 weeks before, I had somebody in a triangle choke, a wrestler, Daryl Golar, and he lifted me up and he slammed me on the freaking ground against the wall with my head. I go, dude, we're training. I got to fight in 2 weeks. My whole freaking neck was jacked up. Couldn't do anything anymore. I could only hit the back. I couldn't even roll anymore. So that didn't help to go to the fight. But again, it didn't matter if I had those 2 weeks extra in. Against a guy like a Randleman who's been wrestling since they're 6 years of age, you're not going to stop a takedown. So it's better to find different ways. That's why I start coming with those elbows. I found ways to, what do I do when he takes me down? Because it will happen. It's not going to be if, it's going to be when he's going to take me down.
Do you think that's the mistake a lot of fighters make? They focus too much on what their opponent can do instead of what they can do. Yeah. For example, what you would tell us, you focused on, okay, I can hit with my elbows. So, okay, bring me down and I will hit you with my elbows. Do you think that's the mistake?
Yeah, it's 100% mistakes. Those things that, if I throw a jab and he counters right away with a cross, and the cross is a good cross and I feel it, that can, by a normal fighter, completely stop him from throwing one more jab. Because he thinks that guy, no, I'm thinking he might have been lucky. So I can try it again. And it's all when I fix, there's a boom, now suddenly get, oh, see, now he doesn't do it. But a lot of these people, it gets inside their heads. That's an example that you had, I think, with Strickland and Adesanya in the first round. He freaking hit him, connected suddenly with a really hard punch. And I think that got in his head. Because now he knew, oh shit, he has the power to knock me out. Because that was a hard shot. I mean, he turned around. And I think then once that gets inside your head, you start fighting different. And once you start fighting different, you're not in your element anymore. And then you lose the fight. So yeah, I truly believe that.
Talking about the sparring story you just told where somebody slammed you on your head, there's always been a discussion on like how hard should you spar, because you also, of course, in the Netherlands we have like the Dutch kickboxing and Dutch style of sparring, which can be pretty rough sometimes.
We go.
And then you also have some other fighters, some UFC fighters. I think Max Holloway, who doesn't spar at all. So where do you stand on that line?
I was sitting at dinner with a bunch of fighters, and somebody was asking questions about how many times they sparred during the week. And Randy Couture says that it was on Fridays they would go like 80%. And I started laughing. And he goes, "Why are you laughing?" So how much you spar? I said, every day. How many times? I said, every workout we spar. We always spar. That's what we're going to do. So we always spar. And how hard you go? I go, we go. I'm not going to knock you out to the head. That will almost never happen. If I did it in a fight, it's on purpose because then he's been a douche. But otherwise, I would never do. But body shots, oh, you're going to go down. I will go. But I expect you to do the same thing with me. I have people coming in when we're sparring. They don't even want to train with us. But what they don't see is that the people that I spar with have very good control. Like I kick him in the head, but I'll stop at the moment that I kick him in the head. It might look, but they know it's just a tap. I didn't pull it through. So it looks for the people, it looks very violent, but it's, to the body and to the legs, we go. But to the head, of course, but you need really good sparring partners for that. And if you have really good sparring partners, yes, then you want to spar every single day. That's what you're going to do. It's like being a swimmer and not swimming. It makes no sense. Like, do everything on the dry land and then, you jump in. Makes no sense. You're going to spar. We just had our first loss. Looking at the poster here for Owen Chelmia. He was the champion, 5 fights, undefeated, karate combat, never spars. And then he got dropped with a back kick to the body, to the liver with the heel. Very well done by Tebuev, Mirza Tebuev. And I called him afterwards. I said, dude, you're going to have to change because the reason he got you with this is you simply never saw that movement. And if you never saw that movement, you can't prepare yourself for it. And he says, no, I already made the decision, boss. I'm going to go over spar. I said, dude, imagine what you can do. What he's been doing with no sparring is freaking amazing. Can you imagine when you start sparring? You're going to become so good, but make sure you have the correct sparring partners. The ego guys, take them out, man. You don't need these guys because those guys deep down inside, they want what you have, but they can never be there and they're going to hurt you. You're going to watch out for that. But if you have good guys, if you spar with Ernesto Horst, with the Peter Ertz, with the Sebi Shield, all these guys, with the Giga Musashi, you'll never get injured. They know exactly what they're doing. And they know exactly how hard they hit. Now, if you hit them hard, you might get a hard hit back, but that's the name of the game, that's what we love. That's why when you hit somebody by accident hard, you go, dude, I didn't mean this. You just walked into it. Tell them. Because most of the time when you don't say it, you see these wars going on in a fight. So everybody's freaking fighting. So, yes, it's all about having great sparring partners. Then you're going to be okay.
Don't you find it strange then that we get a lot of fighters who don't show up for the fight because in fight week they get injured due to their sparring partners? Don't you think the coaches should be better prepared or the fighters should be better prepared? Why does it happen?
Yeah, but that's the thing. But that's the... If you work out, if you have a 10-week training camp and you work out for 8 weeks, you don't need to spar the last 2 weeks. You think you're going to forget what you did these 8 weeks? It's like riding a bike, like I said. You do not spar anymore. That sparring that we did, we don't do that in the last 10 days before a fight. We'll never do. The same as rolling on the ground. You got to watch out. I mean, my submissions are really tight. And I'm saying this not because, oh, look at it. No, but my feet will scrape over over your head. I don't go big. I go, everything is tight. Everything I wanted, but if I hit with my bone, one of the bones from my foot or from his foot, if they catch me, it can be a cut. And a little cut can already stop the whole fight. So you got to just flow and just do it nice and relaxed. That's the last 10 days. You don't want to go hard for sure. And you don't want to spar against a new person. Never, ever do that. Or against beginners. Never do that as well, because they all move different, and they're awkward with their punches. You kick an elbow, you go like, shit, you get hurt. This guy's a freaky. He just started fighting. Yeah, don't spar with guys. Spar with guys who really know what they're doing, and then they take the egos out of it. And then once there's a fight, just in front of each other, you're hitting this far away. You don't even come close. It's just reaction and just reaction drills that you're doing, but not hitting anymore. Yeah, stay far away from that.
So it's still crazy how often it still happens. For example, we had Charles Oliveira in the last week of the fight. He gets a huge cut on his eyebrow, and the fight is off. And we had Calvin Gastelum had the same thing happening to him. 2 weeks before the fight, he gets a huge cut on his head, and the fight is off. But
stupid. That
makes me wonder: were you picky with your sparring partners, or did you just spar with everyone?
No, very picky. But then again, also there were not a lot of people who would spar with us. So. Leon is perfect, but then when I went to America, I had these freaking monsters. You got Marco Huas, Oleg Taktarov, Pedro Hizo. Yeah, and do a Shark Tank with those guys. So now I'm fighting 4 guys, 1.5 minutes each. I have 6-minute rounds. I'm starting on my back the whole time. Fight starts, 1.5 minute, but bell goes, next guy comes in. I don't get rest. I start on my back again because I always put myself in the worst position possible. So my escapes will be really good. And then 6 minutes against guys like that who every 1.5 minute change. Well, you need to have good guys because those guys can pretty much do with you whatever they want to do. At the very end, you're getting very tired. If one ego maniac does something, yeah, that could be bad for me. But they're all professional fighters. They're all friends. They know exactly how hard to go. So you're going to be okay. But it's the little things like that eye cut could be from grappling. An eye cut could be just go from wrestling. There's a little headbutt. I mean, it goes really fast. So we always stay far away from each other. And we roll like the Japanese roll. You go, they call it the flow, right? I got him in an armbar. He kind of gives me the armbar. And then once I have the armbar, I'm not going to finish him with it. I'm going to give him an escape. So maybe I don't grab the wrist as hard, or his hand as hard. So I let him roll out and he goes to the side. And it's this flow that you're doing back and forth and back and forth. And then he taps because you're not tapping. And then the other way around. And that really light, that's no problem. But if you still want to go for submissions, well, you have a risk of hitting headbutts and little tiny. And I have really thin bones here. You do this, pack, it will start bleeding. So you got to really watch out.
Bas, before we move on to like what happened after your career, there's something special I want to talk about because you mentioned the breathing at the beginning of our conversation, but the breathing still follows you. You have your own business, the O2 trainer, the mouthpiece to train your breathing. Can you tell us more about it? Because I'm curious because I see it on Instagram, but I don't know much about it. So I was curious if you could tell us more about it.
So I used to do track and field, and I was going to do decathlon. That was my focus. Had a really good high jump, long jump, shot puts, spears, javelin, discus. I was getting really good at all these things. But of course, the 800 meters and the 1500 meters were always the worst for me because I had severe asthma. I had every 6 week an asthma attack, and that would mean a week in bed, not able to eat because I couldn't breathe. So I did like breathing like that for 24/7. But then after an asthma attack, I would always break my running times in track and field. And I go, what the heck is going on? And then I went to the doctor because I spent a lot of time at doctors at the time, and I saw a drawing of a pair of lungs at the wall. And that's when I realized as a kid, you think the infection is in your lungs, but it's not. It's in the airways, the bronchial tubes that go to the lungs. And it showed a healthy airway and it showed an infected airway next to each other. And I go, shit, I've been working out my lungs with resistance for a week straight, 24/7. I'm pull air into this tiny area. So unknowingly, I made my lungs stronger. That's what I was thinking at the time, that your lungs did the work. But I come back to that in a bit. So why don't I come up with something that controls the air intake? So I came up with a simple washer, een revetje in Dutch, I think is the word. A little circle with a hole in it. And I would put this in front of my teeth and I would try to see if I could breathe through that thing. Super dangerous, because if you open your mouth and it shoots in your freaking lungs, that's it. If it passes the one of the tubes, the bronchial tubes, you're dead. You can't Heimlich it out anymore. It's very dangerous, right? So, but it was always in my head. And then I go about 14 years ago, when I stopped fighting, I did everything. I say, you know what? I should make this thing. Now, I still had asthma. Every workout, I need an inhaler. Every fight, I need an inhaler. Always an inhaler in my pocket. Always, because if I would sneeze violently 3 times, my asthma would come and I had to open it up. So if I leave house without with an inhaler, that could be a big problem for me. I started training with the prototype. 3.5 weeks later, no more inhaler. Whoa, okay. I said it to my buddy in Holland, Peter, and I go, try this. He said, what? I say, try this, do this. And he calls me 8 days later and he said, dude, I want to sell them in Holland. I said, what's going on? He goes, my asthma is gone. I go, see, with me, the same thing. So we're up to something, you know. I didn't know about inspiratory muscle training. I didn't know there's 2,000 published medical journals about what I just made. So I said, dude, but it was very hard to bring on the market because you're a fighter. People think, you know, it's like, it's a gimmick. That's what they think. They don't realize what I just said. There's over 2,000 published medical journals about inspiratory muscle training, which is what the auto trainer is. But then I went to the doctor's office one time, Dr. Belisa Vranic, she's the world-renowned breathing expert. And the first thing she did was measuring my chest because your lungs have no muscle in there, right? Your lungs don't do anything. The way your lungs open up is by expanding your chest, which is done by your diaphragm and by your intercostals, which are the muscles in between you. The external intercostals, they open up your chest. And that chest expansion creates a vacuum between the body and the lungs, and then opens up the lungs. So it's really weird because if you think about it, your lungs don't expand because your chest doesn't expand because you put air in it. It's the other way around. You expand your chest, and that's how you pull the air in. So I went to her and she measured my chest expansion because she wants to know how far it is, because the greater my chest expansion is, the more air I can put in my lungs. And she measures exhale, inhale, and she goes, yeah, she says, no, that's not possible. Do it again. And then I do it again, and she goes, wait. She walks out, and she comes back with another doctor. And I go, okay, it's either really good or really bad, right? And she goes, if I don't bring him, he's not going to believe it. I go, what do you mean? He says, well, normally when somebody breaks our expansion, they break it by 1/8 of an inch. You just almost went 2 inches further than everybody else. How is that possible? And I have my auto trainer, and I go, well, I'm using this thing, this auto trainer. So then she started working out with it, and she put it in her book. And once she put it in her book, because she was a world-renowned breathing expert, people start noticing, and now suddenly people start buying it, and they realized. And then she says, I got in contact with a trainer from Usain Bolt, and he says, Bas, there's published medical journals, there's everything out there, you know, and he sent me a whole list where I could go to. And then I realized, man, this has been around for decades. But because the idea that I had as a kid was so simple, I bypassed all the other patents, and I could get the patent for this thing. So then I started training with it. Now, what it does is this. I'll always say, I give people 5 facts. Fact number 1 would be nothing more important in your body that you have direct control over is breathing. And that's it. It's your number 1 priority. The survival rule of 3 states that you can go 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 minutes without oxygen. So 3 minutes, you might be dead. Focus on that. That's number 1. Then the second fact is your lungs don't do anything by themselves. What I just explained. It's all your diaphragm, your breathing muscles, which, by the way, you have 11 pounds of breathing muscles that open up your lungs and that also squeeze it down. Your internal intercostals or your obliques, they squeeze the air out again. But your diaphragm and the external intercostals is for inhaling. Okay, good. Now, what happens when you're... Fact number 3. How does your endurance increase? People go like, yeah, you train really hard. I know that. But what happens? Why is your stamina increasing when you train really hard? There's got to be a reason, right? Well, I found the reason. The reason is when you work out a muscle over and over again, it becomes more efficient at its job. And because it's more efficient, the word already says it, it uses less oxygen. Therefore, your stamina increases. Okay, put that in the back pocket. Number 4 is, what is gassing? Metaborflex is the beautiful name for gassing. So always explain the same. You're running a hill, 45-degree angle. You're getting, it's getting hard. It's getting hard. Suddenly, boom! It feels like you get hit in the face because this is where you start to gas. What happens at that moment when you're gassing is that your body starts redirecting that oxygenated blood. They call it blood stealing. That's literally the term that they use, right? So they take the blood away from your legs that you're using to run, and they send it to your number one priority in the body, which are your breathing muscles. Because if you don't breathe for 3 minutes, you can be dead, right? So that's what the body does. Okay, wait a minute, but you just said that if you work out a muscle over and over again, it gets more endurance. So why don't I work out those 11 pounds of breathing muscles over and over again so they get more endurance? So then instead of starting to gas here, they don't have to steal blood anymore. You start gassing there. And that's what the O2 trainer does. It just works out your 11 pounds of breathing muscles, gives you maximum chest expansion. And not only that, it gives them more endurance. And so, like I said, that's why every Olympian endurance athlete is using inspiratory muscle training. Usain Bolt is using inspiratory muscle training. First thing he does when he gets out of his, what did they say, high altitude tent. He sleeps in a high altitude tent, apparently. This is before games, of course. So if all these Olympians are focusing on it, and then we have the whole world going like, oh, what's going on? Then take in consideration that 95% of us is breathing incorrect. If I tell you guys, right, okay, take a deep breath, both of you, deep breath. See, and both you raising your shoulders. This is horribly wrong.
We thought we were doing it right because we did it through our nose.
Same.
So we both thought, we did it right. We breathe through our nose. So
yeah, no. And I'll come back to that in a little bit as well. 4 to 6 of these breaths is the same as one belly breath, one diaphragmatic breath. Big difference. As a baby, we all breathe perfect. And that perfect breath got stolen away when we're about 5.5 years of age, because that's where we go to school. This is when you go to the doctor and he puts a stethoscope here. Hey, take a deep breath. He's listening to your lungs. So you think, hey, my lungs are here. They're not here. They're here. They're lower. You know, your diaphragm is attached to the bottom part of your rib cage and it expands. Actually, I might have a thing here somewhere, please.
Not only a model, also
smart. No. I do have it.
So from now on,
hallelujah, a vegetable steamer. But let's say this is the diaphragm. This is literally a little bit what the diaphragm looks like, right? A diaphragm is a thin dome-shaped muscle tendon. It's only like 4 millimeters thick. It's a really strong muscle though. And this is what it does in the body. So the outsides, they're attached to the bottom part of your rib cage, 360 degrees circumferential around your body. This is what the diaphragm does. It drops down. Now, from that moment, you go like, wow, what is that doing? Now, look at it from this side. Poof, poof. It expands. So as soon as it drops, it expands your rib cage and you open up your lungs because that vacuum sucks over the lungs. So this is what the diaphragm, it does a lot. It's for your balance. It's for back problems. It's for digesting areas. That's why people have problems with digesting. It's all wrong breathing because 95% of us is breathing wrong. The 5% who are breathing correctly probably have breathing classes. This is how bad it is. And you can Google this. What percentage of people breathe incorrect? It will pop up. So it's not like me saying this here to sell this thing. You can do all the Google search. You can go to my website, o2trader.com, click on science. There's a whole list of published medical journals. And then it's COPD, asthma, PTSD, anxiety, adjusting to high altitude, sleep apnea. I mean, there's a whole freaking list. Back problems, ankle problems. How is that possible with breathing? Now we're going to do a new test with Saxon Panchik. He's the last year's world champion in CrossFit. These guys are the most insane athletes on the planet. He has been smashing his records as soon as he started training with the O2 trainer. He's like, dude, this is the most insane thing because it's all has to do with power and balance and correct posture. It's all breathing. So, once you start training with it and even if you have no diseases, no nothing, it will force you to breathe the correct way, so to not raise your shoulders anymore. Because there's these little tiny holes in here, right? They come with 16 different settings. So here's a flap. And that means that if I breathe out, the flap opens up, I can completely exhale, clean out everything in my body. And then I start inhaling, this flap closes, forces you to breathe into this one, and then you can work out your breathing muscles with resistance. It's like weight training for your breathing muscles. That's what you do. And this is the bomb, right? Everybody goes like, yeah, but how many workouts do I have to do? Every day. Yeah, shit, I don't have the time for that. 4 minutes. That's it. I'm an overachiever. I do 5 minutes. I put a timer up. I just do 5 minutes. That's what I do every day. And I've been doing it since 2018, every single day. I might have missed 60, but that's about it due to traveling. I just simply do it every day. My life changed. It completely changed. Once you realize that you have back breathing muscles and you start activating those, forget about it. Your stamina, I mean, it's insane. I have a body action system here, the punching device that I have. I don't even open my mouth if I'm boxing. Once I start involve kicks, yeah, I'm going to have to because it's a bigger muscle and you get more tired. But I can go as hard as I can. Don't even have to open my mouth with boxing. I never had that before. You see me in fights breathing like this. That's completely gone. Now I come out of a hard round. It's this. And I'm going crazy. And that's my breathing now. It's the bizarre. The difference is just bizarre. And now, thankfully, a lot of people stop picking it up. And they start realizing, wait a minute, it's been around for decades. Maybe I should look into it. And all these people, I mean, I have the reviews. We have 4.7 star review on Amazon. We have the highest rating from all the breathers out there. And people go like, my asthma is gone, COPD is gone, cystic fibrosis. I mean, the things it does is just amazing. It's the gift that keeps on giving, I call it, because I had no clue. Back problems, who knows? Digesting issues. That's all digestive issues. It's all diaphragmatic breathing because if your diaphragm drops down, it massages your intestines. So you have better nutrition, absorption, everything becomes better. But nobody does it. We all breathe like this. And you know, one of the biggest reasons, and you're going to laugh about this because everybody goes, there's no way. Google it. So you know it's real. One of the reasons we start breathing by this is because once we're about the age of 6, 7, we start getting interested in a different sex. And we realize, and we see superheroes with their abs, but we realize if we keep breathing like we're doing, they might think we're fat because now you're breathing with your belly. And then automatically that perfect breath has been taken away and we start adjusting. We're the only mammal on the planet that breathes incorrectly. Think about that. And it's all because we want to look cool. And then on top of everything, because there's the nose breathing coming back, because people go, this is the funniest part. Yeah, but Bas, you know, you got to make one for your nose because I only breathe through my nose. Okay, really? Okay. I'll do a $10,000 bet with you. We're going to run a 45-degree angle hill. Within 2 minutes, you open your mouth. What a bet? Good luck, because you will. Now, there's extreme crazy athletes that maybe don't need to do that, but that's 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000, like when you're really far ahead. But check this out. So you think about, nose breathing is always the best, right? Nose breathing does a lot because it filters out bacteria, harmful bacteria. It brings the air in closer. It's already a little bit with resistance in respiratory because it's through the nose, not as big as a hole, so to say, than your mouth. And it comes in calmer. It absorbs better in your body. And not only that, nose breathing also affects the olfactory epithelium, it's what they call it. And that produces nitric oxide for you. And that's only done by nose breathing. So nitric oxide is a vasodilator. That means that makes your vessels wider. And that means that your blood pressure drops, but then your heart rate starts beating harder because they want to catch up, of course. And then people go, that's bad. No, it's actually really good for you. But that's all done by correct breathing, so by nose breathing. So 95% is breathing wrong. From the 95%, 75% is breathing through their mouth, which is really bad. Crowded teeth, the gingivitis, the things that you get from mouth breathing. Faces are getting disformed right now. Kids getting longer faces because they breathe through their mouth. But tests have been done that you do about 22 to 24,000 breaths a day, right? If you do 500 or 1,000 through your mouth, doesn't make any freaking difference. This is 30 breaths. So don't worry, nose breathers. You're not going to forget how to breathe through your nose. This is just 5 minutes a day. And then the rest of the 48 hours or whatever. No, it's 24 hours a day. Yeah, 23 hours and whatever, 58 minutes, 55 minutes. You can breathe through your nose. Don't worry about it. But this is also the great thing. When you make your breathing muscles stronger, you're going to be able to breathe in better through your nose because now you made your whole inspiratory system better. So that's why it's also good for snoring because you have better inhalation through your nose.
Bas, great explanation. I mean, we got to get into it if it's that important. I believe you completely. I've seen it on your Instagram, and if there's researches, we can read them. But for the Dutch people, where can they read about it? Where can they buy it? How do they get informed about the O2 trainer?
So for them, it's o2trainer.eu. Go to that website. Because the shipping from here it is expensive and it's all hard things to do. And that's actually the guy, Peter. That's the guy who had his asthma cured within 8 days. So he's a big believer. He's like me, doing it every single day. He never stops. It's one of those things that in the morning, when I wake up, I do meditation, I do prayers, and then the first thing I do is it's just 5 minutes. And most of the time, I jump in my cold plunge first. I'm pointing because it's the building, the room next to me. I do my cold plunge for 4 minutes. And then I come out and I warm myself up with my core, with the breathing exercises. And then most of the time, if you come out of a cold plunge, it's the best to do power training to warm yourself back up because you're so freaking cold. What is it? I do it in 3 degrees. So it's pretty gnarly if you go for 4 minutes. But working out works always best to get those muscles.
So o2trainer.eu for the Dutch people, o2trainer.com for the American.
For the people in the rest of the world, go to Amazon. I got my own Amazon page, Bas Rutten, O2 Trainer page as well. You can pretty much get it everywhere. It's on social media, o2trainer.com, on Instagram, on TikTok, on you name it, Twitter. We all have the Instagram, the handle.
We'll make sure we'll put it in the description also.
Yeah, for sure, man. You can see God didn't bless Bas only with the looks, being a model. He also gave him brains, intelligence. So I'm going to check it out for sure, Bas. For my dad who snores, he needs it, He snores. My mom's getting crazy with my dad snoring, And Amir needs it as well with his asthma. He had a Shark Tank recently because Amir got his blue belt like a month ago.
A month ago.
And he was in the Shark Tank, and then he needed his
inhaler. I needed my inhaler after I think it was 20 minutes.
Oh,
now okay, maybe it was shorter, but after a couple of minutes, I was done because I couldn't find my breath. I was switching up nose, mouth, belly, no belly. It was really hard. So my girlfriend was sitting and watching because that's the first time I said, "Okay, I get my blue belt. Now you can come and watch me." But she kept giving me the inhaler because otherwise I couldn't breathe normally.
You know who set me up with a breathing expert? Joey Diaz, really? the comedian. And he's a big jiu-jitsu guy who could never do his class continually. He set me up with her because he called me going, "Brother!" He's always that voice, he's a crazy guy. "I can do the whole classes now. It's the same. This thing is insane." He loves the freaking thing because now he can roll the entire class. Made a big difference for him, and he's the guy who set me up.
I will definitely check it out to get it. If it's working, then I need it. So
amazing. For people at home, make sure you check it out. o2trainer.eu for the European,
for the Dutch.
And
yep. And then click on science. So you have all the published medical journals. So you go because people go, it's a gimmick. I go, well, over 2,000 published medical journals say different. Sorry, and it's all positive. There's not one positive. And they go for everything. For, like I said, for sleep apnea, for everything, there's a published medical journal.
Amazing. I think we don't want to take too much of your time, Bas, of course. We have some...
Yeah, before we move on to the end, we have some questions from our listeners. Some of them you already answered, but we will still, for them, we will also mention them so they know we asked it, because otherwise they say you made up the questions. No, but we really did. The first question, and you already answered it a bit, was from Tim. He asked, how would your career have looked like if you didn't become a fighter? You mentioned chef. Was it your dream to start an own restaurant, or how would it look? How would we seen Bas as a chef?
I was also mesmerized by by cooking, yes, but also video editing or maybe even DJing. I always thought that one of those things would. I love video editing. I would love to have watch a movie, and then tell that movie in a 1 minute clip. I think that's a nice little skill to have and cool to do. So something like that, I think. But Yeah, let me just say I'm happy fighting came along, because I don't know if I would have been great in the other ones.
That's great. The second question was from Titi and Nick. Why don't we ever see palm strikes in current MMA or bare knuckle?
Because people are stupid. It's really, if you break it down, it's the most dumbest thing. On a short, okay. If Sammy Shields fights a guy who's my height, where do I have to fight? Close, right? I have to stay inside his reach, because if he gives me on the outside, I'm going to be slaughtered. So I need to have a boatload of stamina, and I need to push the whole time. I need to be close, because on shorter distance, my arms can travel longer than his arms can, because they're longer. So that means the longer a punch can travel, the more power it has. Now, I'm doing this with myself in my face. This is, imagine I only have this move to hit. If I make it a palm strike, look what happens. I have this much more space. They say that's not a lot. Well, on this distance, that's a lot. That's 20%. You get extra power. So on short distance, palm strikes are always better. Then another one. A palm strike, if I give you a hook cross, that's kind of a stupid combination, because my hook is shorter. If I connect with the hook, my cross is there. So it would be a short cross. It makes no sense, because the real power is at the end of my punch. If I make a palm strike, I have a way longer punch that can set up my cross. Also, a palm strike, when people say palm strike, they think I slap him in the face. I don't. I use this bone. I use the lowest part, and I hit you behind the ear. I'll swing around the head, still legal. It's outside the mohawk, they say, the 2-inch mohawk that you have. But you're going to hit him here behind the ear. Dude, your equilibrium is going to freak out. I mean, you can just do this to yourself. Like, you feel that, because you're not ready for that. We all are ready for impact from the front and from the side. But from the back, Mike Tyson, you remember? He would be so close, he would almost hit the back of the head with his punches. And people were dropping like flies. And of course, he's got great power as well. But the palm strike on shorter range, always better. Better way to set up your punches. And in bare knuckle, I don't even know it's allowed in bare knuckle, because they might not allow it. Possible. Because they call it bare knuckle. But that will be the best, because you're not going to break your hands as fast. You can break your hand, though, because I thought you could never break your hand, which is what I did. Look, on the very first punch against the person that I had, that was a 27-minute fight that I had against the guy. First punch, I break my hand. I submitted him 5 times. That was the same guy who I knocked out in the very first fight at 43 seconds. But so you can break your hand. You got to watch out a little bit, but it's way harder to break your hand with the palm strike than it is with a punch. So, yeah, I would really use it.
So when you get in a street fight, palm strike first and then a double leg takedown.
That's it. I do a clothesline. It's a new punch that I do. Well, new for the last 10 years, but it's outside of my fighting career. I hit a clothesline. I'll send you guys a video.
Yeah, sure.
I'll send you a link from a video and where I show a clothesline to Shane Faison. He came to visit me, the martial arts expert. And I said, kick the back. And he kicks the back, and the back goes like, kink, kink. I said, watch this clothesline. And you see the back fold around my freaking arm. I go, dude, that's a high kick compared to a clothesline. It is such an incredible power. Like, if you hold a shield, I'll move you. You're going to freaking fly. It's super powerful. Plus, what it also does is they can be a full defense. It all the way loops around the defense, and it hits the back of the head again. So if I get in a street fight right now, I'm going to try it out. Because I always said it because I would like to see if I can. But I think it's one point.
But I don't think anybody would mess with you right now.
I hope,
no, I don't. No, it takes a long time.
I hope maybe you can send us a video where you use it in real life. You know, like in a real life scenario. No,
that will be.
We will keep it disclosed. We will keep it disclosed.
We send it back to you where we're using it in real life. You know,
no problem.
Yeah, that's a YouTube moment right there. And then first we show me doing it on the back, and I said, "This is how
Bas,
it looks."
We need the views, Bas. We need the views right now. So.
The next question, Bas, is from Jason. You had a lot of fights in your career, a lot of different opponents. Which opponent impressed you the most during your career?
I think when I fought Funaki for the second time, he was the guy who put me in a toe hold, and in a rematch I knocked him out. But it was a very hard fight. He was very freaking tough. Broke both his cheekbones, his nose was broke, and he just kept coming. You know, and then every time I thought the fight was over, and then I would walk to the corner, and I heard already the people, and he would be standing and wiping his blood off and then people start cheering, Funaki, and I go like, shut the hell up. You know, I go, oh, here we go. Because I was getting tired. You see me in the corner breathing completely wrong, you know, but then finally at the very end, I grabbed him by the hair and I kneed him in the face so freaking hard. That was it. He couldn't get up from that one. But I was amazed with, because I had black and blue marks on my knees and my palms. They were bruised from hitting this freaking guy. And every time he got back up, I was like, okay, we're in for a fight.
A question I have I have is because of following this question. Which fighter in current MMA, or like in the past 20 years, impressed you the most?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's such a hard question.
So,
yeah, Khabib, I mean, he's got a good. If George St. Pierre, I mean, there's so it's just a very hard question, because so Khabib is undefeated, right? I mean, it's kind of got to go to him. And it's also, it's not by just wrestling, right? He'll knocking people out, submitting people. So it's, yeah, he's an animal. But also, if you look over the entire career before they started losing, like a Fedor Emelianenko, you know, like a Sakuraba, all these guys, they need to be in the picture. Yes, they started losing because unfortunately there was no other ways to make money. And then, you know, thankfully I got injuries, you know, because I would have been the same. I would have kept on fighting if I didn't have my injuries. And you are going to lose, you know, because you're going to face guys half your age who started training when they were 6. You know, it's going to be a problem. You can't put all the work in there anymore, because if you work out 4 times a week super hard, you're going to overwork if you're 42. You know, it's simply not good. So thankfully I got a bunch of injuries, which I hated at the time, but now I really love it because now I have a great finishing record. Otherwise, I would have maybe tarnished that a little bit.
The last question is from Nanne. Which period would you have preferred to fight? Current MMA or your own time?
My own time. And many people ask me, like, listen, I'm very blessed, man. I mean, thinking the Lord, he took really care of me. Also with the injuries, which I hated at the time, and I was cursing him for that. But now I know it was all set for a problem. I was very for my follow-up stuff. I started commentating, started doing movies. I've been very blessed. And the good thing about, yes, I could make millions now, and I never made that. My biggest payday was $225, and that was in 2006, after 6 years of not competing. It was $225,000. And before that, my biggest pay was $55,000. That was for the UFC, which was considered at the time a lot of money, because the 8-fight tournament was $60,000, and I got, for one fight, I got $55,000. So that was considered high money. So there was not a lot of money. But so I've been doing well as well. I got a lot of businesses. I'm very fortunate. So I didn't have to keep on competing. But what I have now is that I'm in the Legends Hall of Fame, the UFC Legends Hall of Fame. And that means I'm one of the group that started it. You know, so you can become a champion now, and over 2,000 years, a lot of champions. There's only one group that started it, and I'm part of that group. And you know, so when in 1,000 years people go back in history, well, it started with those 100 knuckleheads or 150, whatever they are. And I'm part of that. And I think that is super cool. So, yeah, I'm perfectly happy with how my career went.
Great answer.
That's a great answer. Before we stop recording and we talk a bit with you after podcast, we always ask our guests, what kind of advice would you give to our listeners? So if it's about fighting, or it's in life general, except for buying the O2 trainer, of course. What's the advice you would give to people in life?
Judge people on their lives. Don't judge people on their mistakes. And that's what everybody's doing right now. You can be a good guy your entire life and you mess up one time. And even when it's drunk or something, people freaking tear you a new one. And I think it's so stupid to do that, because this way you're offending everybody. So I would say, you know, be true to your word. That's another one. Once you say yes, you said yes. You didn't say no, you didn't say maybe. You said yes, you're going to have to do it. It's black and white. There's no other things to do it. Live up to it, whatever you do. Being on time. These are all principles that I always do. Be on time. You know, if you need to be 1 o'clock somewhere, you don't want to come at my place 1:01. I'm out. If I say I leave at noon, I leave at noon. Yeah, but I'm going to be 5 minutes late, leave 5 minutes sooner. That's what I say. I'm here, you can be here. Very simple. If I train you, same thing. You show up late, get one more warning. Show up again, that's it. We're not training anymore. That's what I'm doing, you know. It's like, it's simple. Just respect other people's times. and just don't base anything or everything that you a vision that you have of a person on one mistake that they make. And that's the problem we're having right now. And you have that with fighters too. And poor fighters, some fighters, they lose 2 or 3 fights in a row, they get spit out. Now they're suddenly worthless. Now think about his career, what he did. I was just talking to Fedor Emelianenko. I mean, what a freaking great career he had. Sakuraba, unbelievable career. Yes, at the end, he started losing because they put him through the ringer. But think about what he did before, and then, we get some peace in this world because it's the most insane world. We start kicking family members and friends out of our friend circle because of politics. It's like the most that all love is gone, everything is gone, and it's you make one mistake, that's it. They have this funny joke, right? This guy says, I've been a bridge builder my entire life, right? I built like freaking 40 bridges around the world. I went to Japan, I've been there, lose all these countries. He says, you think they call me a bridge builder? No, he says, but you have sex with one goat. See what happens.
That's a great way to end it. Bas, we want to thank you for your time. We'll talk a bit after we stop recording, but thank you for your time. It was amazing. It was our first podcast in English, so for the new English listeners, for the Dutch listeners, if you hear the little Dutch accent, of course we're Dutch, but we did our best. And again, Bas, thank you for your time. It was amazing, great stories. Before we end, shout out to Nico. You heard Bas. It's good stuff. So go to Nico for your fight gear.
Yep.
Go to Beast Mode for your supplements, and check out o2trainer.eu for the O2 Trainer in the Netherlands. Check out Amazon. Check out o2trainer.com around the world. And again, Bas, it was amazing. It's a great pleasure to have you. And
yes, of course.
I
want to thank you
much,
as well, Bas. Your last episode did a lot for us as well with the podcast. It grew a lot, so thank you for that. And it's always fun having you. We look forward to having you. You're a great storyteller. You can entertain the people easily, and we really appreciate that you took the time to sit here and talk to us.
I really appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much, guys. It's fun. But yes, we can run this back again.
There will definitely be a part 3. Maybe when we're in America. We'll go to America. We'll visit you. Or in some cafe. Hopefully. We will do it like that. We need to do it in person one time.
In person, yeah, that would be great. Hopefully by then, I got my own things, everything starting, because that means I'm going to have to buy another place on the site where I can do all the cooking and all that stuff. So that would be cool, because then we can do it right there.
We'll know you make it happen, man. We'll know you make it happen. And,
definitely.
Yeah, the Netherlands has a lot of love for you, man. The comments are still flowing, and it was amazing. Thank you, Bas.
So, Bas, thank you to all our listeners. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Go subscribe. Check out Bas's socials. Check out the O2 Trainer socials. We will put the link in the description. And, go check it out. Thank you all.